My name is Denis Kuvshinov. I'm head of threat intelligence department at Positive Technologies. I'm glad to be here. It's my first international conference as a speaker. So thanks to the organizers for the invitation. And today I would like to tell you about our investigation related to APT group Space Pirates. So I will tell you about the malware, the history of discovery of the group, about TTPs, about network infrastructure, and some funny moments. I don't have much time to tell you about all of aspects of our research, but I hope you find this information interesting and useful maybe for your further researchers. So let's start. But first, a few words about myself. I have been working for the company since 2017, and I am tracking activities of hacker groups as is malware analyzing. So I'm a regular speaker at Russian InfoSec conferences, but now I want to share information about our investigations on international conferences, so that's why I'm here. Also, I like to do sports, play drums, and of course I have a Twitter. Let's move on to the group itself. So why did we even call this group Space Pirates? When we discovered this group, it was attacking Russian aerospace industry. And in addition, in some samples, we found word in PDB pass P1 RAT. So in Russian, we pronounce it pirat, but in English, it's like a pirate. We recorded first activity of the group at 2019. But in more depth research showed that it was started in 2017. During this period, the group comprised more than 13 companies, for almost all of these companies from Russia, from government sector, from aerospace industry, military contractors, education institutions, etc. And the main goal of the group is espionage and data theft. When we were investigating activity of this group, we found a lot of overlaps with other Asian groups. For example, TA428, WinNTI, Bronze Union. And of course, we found a lot of new malware, auxiliary tools. But now, many of them are abandoned. And the main tool of this group now is the DDRAT. So let's move on to the group network infrastructure, and for CNC, they usually used DNS domains. For the DNS, they used changeip.com registrator, and as a hosting, they used chupallc.com. So if you have researched activity of other Asian groups, this hosting is familiar for you, and I think this hosting is a familiar hosting of Asian groups. We discovered more than 600 host names of the group, and we found there quite interesting details. So each of domains contain host level, and in host level we found meaningful names. It may be a victim name, or it just used like a phishing domain. So you can easily track activity in the network infrastructure of this group, not only through the DNS, but, for example, through SSL certificates. For example, we found in the infrastructure certificates for ShadowPad, for Shogot malware, and one quite interesting certificate which appeared in the beginning of deployment new server, but we have some doubts about its ownership, and that's why we didn't describe it in our reports. And let's move on to the malware, and we start with DDRAT. At first time, we found it in the customer network where we made incident response. And now DDRAT is the main tool of the group, and usually it's launched via delay side loading technique. And for delay side loading, hacker used vulnerable antivirus components. So DDRAT is the evolution of ShadowPad, and as you could know, ShadowPad is the evolution of plugins. And malware authors continue to develop this tool, and in previous year we found that they modified string obfuscation, modified config structure, added new models, removed some old modules, and etc. And on the slide, you can see comparison table between ShadowPad and DDRAT plugins. So for all, they're the same. These backdoors have the same architecture, and authors of DDRAT just modified some plugins. They added some plugins, removed some plugins. They modified identifiers of plugins. So DDRAT and ShadowPad have a rich set for carrying out complex attacks. For example, they have plugins for remote code execution, upload, download file, network communication, persistence, and proxy, and etc. And I want to tell you one funny mistake which was made by the developers. So DDRAT have 4 DNS servers for resolving its CNC. So 3 of them are mirrored. It's Google DNS, 4 8s, Cloudflare DNS, 4 units, and Quad DNS, 4 9s. And the last one is not mirrored. So they supposed to use here a Cisco DNS, but they used in the code little endian sequence of bytes for IP address storing. And with this mistake, you can easily track activity in the network, customer network, for example. And this not be always work, because 3 previous DNS must be blocked in the customer network, because the next DNS will used by malware if previous is blocked. And now let's move on to the new malware, Voidoor. So we called it Voidoor because it used as C2. For the black frame, you can see DDRAT. So in this case, malware authors used Korean vulnerable Korean antivirus. And in the second black frame, it's unknown malware. So at the time, we couldn't attribute it to the space pirates because it has a wrong functionality, different architecture. So in this case, they didn't use SSL daily side loading technique, and we need to attribute it to the space pirates. And thanks to the fact that malware authors embedded access key to the account of GitHub, which they used as CNC, we could exploit 4 repositories in this account. So first repository was used like a C2. There we found logs from victims, files with commands. In the second repository, we found additional shellcodes, auxiliary tools for reconnaissance. We really didn't find any information about the third repository because it didn't use in the malware. And the fourth repository is just Alheiser fork of Alheiser. So in first step, malware needs to notify the authors about new victim. Malware just downloaded from the first repository file with victims identifier and try to find their victim identifier where it's currently running. So if malware can do it, it's just send push request with victim identifier to the GitHub to the certain file. And the next step, malware just download next shellcode from the second repository, saved it to the temp folder, and launch it. It worth noting that malware authors created a validation integrity mechanism. So in each file name in the second repository, we found in the end of file name SHA-256 hash of itself. And when malware download it from the repository, it just validate hash of binary itself and with the hash in file name. It's quite interesting detail that all of shellcodes, all of binary files were encoded with base 64. So because GitHub has bad conditions for store raw binary files because these files can be broken. And the first commits in the repository was on Chinese. And in this situation, it's obvious to assume that it was just test of functionality, yes? We didn't find any information which belonged to this machine to any domain, so it's just a general user machine. And of course, we Googled this machine identifier, and we were very surprised when we found it's mentioned in the Chinese developer forums. So we explored this forum, and we found that this author interested in malware development, in kernel development, and we found overlaps between system passes in the messages on this forum and in the logs in the GitHub. So with 19% probability, we can say here that is the main developer of Voidoor, and maybe it's just developer who engaged in the development. And let's move on to the functionality with Void Tools legitimate forum. And on first step in this functionality, malware just decrypts URL, login password, then authenticates on server, saved cookies, and this forum has a private messaging functionality. So you can create here a folders, you can create here a rules. And with these rules, you can automatically replace letters from one folder to another folder. It's like an Outlook, yes? And on next step, malware tries to download, to add these rules, new rules to this forum, and next step, malware will download the folders. But malware cannot create folders. Folders will be created by the authors. And if malware cannot find folder with this victim identifier, it just goes to the infinite cycle, and each 10 hours, malware will try to download this folder. And quite interesting found was the function remember me on this forum. And with this function, you can easily manipulate active session on your account. You can easily find your logins from some IP addresses. And with this functionality, we found more than 6,500 events. In these events, we found 73 unique IP addresses, and for almost it's all of victims. And we notified the victims. For all victims were from Russia, and we received from these victims new malware samples, additional information about attacks. And in these IP addresses, we found 5 IP addresses of space pirate groups. We attributed these IP addresses to the space pirate groups before. And with this information, with 100% probability, we can say that this malware is a malware of space pirate groups. And the last mode of this malware, it's a command execution mode. So in first block, you can see it's just registering new victim. It's a previous step I described it. Between first and second, it's void tools functionality. The second, it's just commit from malware authors to the certain file in the first repository. Its file contain the comments. And the last one, it's a push from malware. Yes, it's just a result of command execution. It's quite simple. And the last malware for today, it's a new malware. We didn't describe it before. It's a Shogot malware. And at first time, we found just a SSL certificate with meta information contained Shogot name. And we really didn't know what is it. But maybe a few weeks ago, our customer sent us an unknown malware, and we suppose that it's GDRAT because it's used such technique, delete loading technique with such file like space pirates used before. And it was just async.rat, so it has different functionality. Yes, it has different commands, but essentially it's just async.rat. So what's happening now? After each of our public reports, group stopped using the network infrastructure, but in few months, a few weeks ago, after our reports, they usually started to register new network infrastructure, and at this time we detected that they do it now. So we have already detected new attacks with new DNS. Of course, we wait that group continue their attacks. So with these QR codes, you can find our old report and new report about this group, and you can find it on our site in threat intelligence folder. So it's all for today. I'm ready to answer for your questions.